Hello and welcome to the grand finale of the TEChBrits interview series. Over the last few weeks, we've shown you guys some of the best of UK tech. But for this finale, we decided to jump across the pond to Canada, where we're going to introduce you guys to Rene Ritchie, as if he needed any introduction.
Exactly. Rene is the editor-in-chief of imore.com. He is also the host of the iMore Show, Zen and Tech, Iterate. He's also the producer of Mobile Nations podcast. So Rene, why don't you go ahead and tell us who you are and what it is you do?
Sure. My name is Rene Ritchie. I am the editor-in-chief of iMore, your #1 site for iPhone, iPod Touch, iPad, Apple TV, and general Apple news, how-tos, and app and accessory reviews. And I'm also the executive producer for Mobile Nations, which is a network of sites that includes Android Central, crackberry.com, iMore, wpcentral, and WebOS Nation.
So who exactly were your main inspirations and what got you into media creation?
I don't know that I have inspirations in the classical sense. I was always just relentlessly bored. When I was very young, I would draw comic book pages all day, every day. From the minute I got home from school until I was forced to go to bed. When I got my computer, I started writing. I started doing desktop publishing. I started doing desktop video with the video toaster and the Amiga. And I just kept going. When web pages started, I started writing web pages in Notepad for the Spry Mosaic in Windows. And it just continued from there. Whatever hobby, whatever activity I was in, I just was compelled to write about it. And to whatever I couldn't find, I researched and put up myself. And it's just kept going from there, from one topic to another. And now it's about mobile devices.
So since you've started, has your content changed much along the way?
Content has changed. Content has been democratized. When I was very young, you had to have an awful lot of money to project content. You had to own a newspaper or television network or radio station or have access to someone who did. It would take years and a lot of connections, and very few people could actually share content with a large amount of other people. And now, thanks to the web and to things like blogs and Twitter and other ways of sharing, literally anybody who has a passion, an idea, and the willingness to do it can create and share content. And if they're consistently good at it, and if they are astute enough to market that content, they can be discovered, found, and have a voice. And that is an incredible change.
So as the owner of probably one of the biggest iPhone blogs that at least I know of, has content creation changed your life in any way?
Content creation has changed my life because it's become my life. It's what I do from when I wake up in the morning till when I go to bed at night. Literally 16 plus hours a day, I wake up and I start creating content, and that's pretty much all I do. Prior to that, I had more varied interests. I worked a day job. I worked in enterprise software marketing. I've taught martial arts for almost 2 decades now. But more and more, just creating content, sharing content, having a voice, and sharing that voice with as many people as possible has just become what I do.
So what was your oldest tech memory?
My oldest tech memory is my Apple II Plus computer, which I got as a small child. I'm sure it cost my father a fortune, and it was huge, a big beige box with an embedded keyboard, and I believe it was a green monitor, green CRT monitor back then, because color was prohibitively expensive. And I remember him bringing it home and setting it up, and I remember drawing in low-res graphics with blocks bigger than most icons these days. And I remember VisiCalc, and I remember games like Beer Run and all the early video game knockoffs. And it's amazing now that children are born who will never know a time before computers or mobile computers, cell phones, phones like the iPhone, phones like Android. Those will be the crappiest, the worst, the lowest technological marvels that they ever know. But to me, having watched all these things, watched computers become personal computers, to go from the vault at IBM to the desktop of everybody to the pocket of everybody, has been a huge shift. And I will never forget the way it started for me on a little desk in my basement in an Apple II Plus.
Who had the biggest influence on technology, in your opinion?
Technology is a broad term. It's been since the creation of humanity. We have picked up tools and used them to become smarter, to make better tools. And I think it's impossible to say any one person influenced technology the most, because every generation, if not few generations, someone comes along who redefines some area of technology in a way that catapults us forward as a species and as people who are groping towards an understanding of our own potential. In our era, I mean, a lot of people could say Bill Gates or Steve Jobs, but there are as many people in medicine and biotechnology, as many people in space exploration, as many people in physics and chemistry who have significantly increased our understanding of the universe around us. And you can find that going back through the decades and centuries and even millennia, through the Einsteins and Edisons and back to the Michelangelos and Da Vinci's and before that. It's not so much the single person, but the standing on the shoulders of giants and looking ever further into the horizon and willing ourselves to travel towards that horizon.
Okay, and finally, if there was one piece of technology you couldn't live without, what would it be and why?
If there's one piece of technology I could not live without, it is my iPhone. It is hard for me to remember a time when I did not have a constantly connected, powerful computer in my pocket. It is become as necessary as, I don't want to say breathing because it's terribly cliched, but I can't go 2 steps without realizing my iPhone is not in my pocket. I can't go very long without checking it to see what's new and what's happening in the greater world around me. It has tied us together and bound us in ways that never before were possible. And if I haven't repeated it enough during our talk, it has democratized technology to an unprecedented extent, so that not only I, but my sister, who basically uses it as a phone plus photo plus camera plus music player, to a scientist, to an explorer, to anybody at all, can have that ubiquitous connection with them all the time. I don't think very soon anybody will be able to live without it. And some people might think that's sad that we have surrendered something, but I would argue that every step along the way, from telling stories to writing stone tablets to inking papyrus to illuminating manuscripts to printing books to now having digital text appear in front of us, we have continued this progress, and we will continue it still. And it'll be unfathomable to think that just a few short years or decades or centuries ago we did not have it.
So then, this may seem a rather silly question, but Mac or PC?
Mac. I started with an Apple II, I switched to Amiga, then I switched to Mac during the non-jobs era, and then I went to PC until Vista came along and I was forced to go running and screaming back to the Mac.
This may seem like an even sillier question, but iPhone, Android, BlackBerry, or Windows Phone?
I use an iPhone. If I had my choice of any platform, even if I didn't work for an iPhone site, I would use an iPhone. It's just the best user experience available today.
So this may seem an even sillier question, but then what was your first tablet?
My first tablet was an iPad. I eschewed all the tablet PCs because they were clunky laptop screens torn off. The iPad was the first real tablet, in my opinion.
And similarly, what was your first computer?
First computer was the Apple II Plus. I elaborated on it earlier, so I will spare you a recapitulation here.
So you got to choose Twitter or Facebook. I feel I already know this answer.
I use Twitter way more than Facebook. I prefer Twitter's model. They have gotten a little bit concerning with their policies recently, but I far prefer that type of social network to a Facebook kind of social network.
Next up, though they're very different services, we've had some interesting answers to this. So would you choose YouTube or Twitter?
I prefer Twitter over YouTube as well, because I can look at YouTube videos in Twitter, but I can't really read Twitter in YouTube yet.
I quite like the yet. Anyway, what's your favorite device that you own in your house?
Favorite device in my house is still an iPhone. I mean, an iPhone combined with an Apple TV is AirPlay perfection, but the iPhone is what powers it.
Thanks for joining us, Rene. We really appreciate your time.
No, thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it.
So why don't you go and tell everyone where exactly we can find you on the internet?
Find me at Rene Ritchie on Twitter or on app.net. and you can find me at www.imore.com.
And thank you guys at home as always. We really appreciate your support, and thank you to everyone who we've interviewed over the last few weeks. Everyone has been fantastic, and this interview series has gone on a lot better than we even imagined. So we hope you guys will join us next week when we're back to our usual episodes. If you haven't seen those, then we basically round up the week in our own real discussion and thoughts.
Yeah, exactly. If you did miss any of the interviews over the last few weeks, there is a playlist where you can watch all of them back to back.
Yeah. So make sure you subscribe to the channel, and we shall see you guys hopefully next week. Ciao.